Good morning, everyone. My name is Chevelle Dixon. Thanking so much, Dr. Meisha Porter and also Dr. Jocelynne Rainey for joining us today, which we're going to be talking about Fundraising Matters for Association of Fundraising Professionals, New York City chapter. We were asked to really talk about this really exciting time right now, which is August 2023, which really marks three amazing things in Black community fundraising. First, it marks August 11th, 1973. This is the 50th anniversary of the birth of hip hop. Also, August 17th marks the National Nonprofit Day, which was first founded in 2017. And then the third thing that encompasses this entire month is this Black Philanthropy Month. And it's really giving a nice eye onto what is current people doing in organizations in our community to promote Black philanthropy, Black fundraising, and Black initiatives. So thank you so much, Bronx Community Foundation, Dr. Meisha Porter, and Dr. Jocelynne Rainey of the Brooklyn Community Foundation. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for
having us.
It's going to be a fun conversation. So by way of little introductions, I'm going to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Chevelle Dixon. I'm the founder and managing director of Pan-African Solutions Consulting. This is on supporting and assisting nonprofits, philanthropic donors, and also government agencies with cooperative economic development in Africa, the Caribbean, and underserved communities here in the United States. This year actually marks 10 years of our founding and got New York City MWBE status, and in 2023, New York State MWBE status. I'm as the founder and managing director. I hail from Brooklyn, New York, and I'm very excited to lead this conversation and moderate it. I have my master's of urban planning and international development from NYU, and also my bachelorette from Harvard University in economics and African studies. Finally, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I'm a dog mom and love traveling, been to over 50 countries in the world. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Meisha Porter now. Dr. Meisha Porter is the inaugural president and CEO of the Bronx Community Foundation. She was previously the chancellor as the first Black woman chancellor of the New York City Department of Education. In that role, she educated over 1.1 million students in over 1,800 schools in New York City. Dr. Porter is from the Bronx, and she has deep roots there, where she started her career as a youth organizer, which ultimately led to the creation of the Bronx School of Law, Government and Justice, the first urban assembly school. She has risen to the ranks, holding positions such as assistant principal, superintendent of the Community School District 11, as well as executive superintendent for the Bronx. The Bronx Community Foundation, which she will talk a little bit more later, she leads efforts to support and invest in the community to eradicate inequity and build sustainable futures for all Bronxites. Dr. Porter holds a bachelor's in English with a concentration in cross-cultural literature from Hunter College, a master's in educational leadership from Mercy College, and an ED from Fordham University as well. Dr. Porter sits on the boards of the Municipal Credit Union, the Urban Assembly, New York Visions for Public Schools, and Build On. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Porter.
Thank you, Chevelle. I'm so excited to be here.
And now I'm going to introduce our other speaker, who is Dr. Jocelynne Rainey. Dr. Jocelynne Rainey is a seasoned executive with over 20 years of management experience in the nonprofit sector. Dr. Rainey joined the Brooklyn Community Foundation in December 2021. She has previously held executive positions in particularly focusing on workforce development all throughout New York City. She was the CEO and president of Get Out and Staying Out. She was the executive vice president and chief administrative officer for the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation. And during her 8 years there, Dr. Rainey increased workforce placements for formerly incarcerated individuals from 100 placements to over 500 placements, bringing the total number to up by 20%. She is a graduate of Southern Connecticut State University. Dr. Rainey also holds her master's in administration from Metropolitan College and a doctorate in leadership from St. John Fisher's College. She is a member of Workforce Development Board in New York City and a trustee of both New York College of Technology Foundation Board and the Mark Morris Dance Group Board. Dr. Rainey is the recipient of several prestigious honors, including being named one of the Network's Journal's 25 Influential Black Women in Business in 2016, and one of Crane's notable Black leaders and executives in 2021. She is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Dr. Rainey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Chanel.
This is a really pivotal time right now. August 2020 really marks in the Black community fundraising. So we have one, the birth of hip hop, two, overall Black Philanthropy Month, and three, National Nonprofit Day, right? So I'm so excited to sit with you, powerhouse CEO doctors, that's going to tell us how you are leading and how all of these things, seemingly different, all played together. So I'm going to really start it off with kicking it off with Dr. Meisha Porter, because, you know, we spread love. It's the Brooklyn way over here. Let the Bronx go first. So let's break down philanthropy in the first place, right? So I'm always all about etymologies of words. So the etymology of the word philanthropy from Latin is philanthropia. Phil meaning love, and anthropia meaning humanity. First launched in 2011, the theme for this 2023 Black Philanthropy Month is Love in Action. Look at that. So as we're looking at Black love in action, I'm just curious, Dr. Meisha Porter, what do you love about your Bronx community? And with regards to philanthropy, how do you put that love in action?
Yeah. Well, Chevelle, you know, spreading love is the Brooklyn way, but if it wasn't for the Bronx, okay?
You're right.
So I think a lot of ways. First of all, I love the Bronx. I've raised my family in the Bronx. And I really credit the Bronx with all of the opportunities that I've had for myself. If it wasn't for my time as a youth organizer, as an educator, that positioned me to be chancellor, I wouldn't have had many of the opportunities that I had, you know, professionally, but also personally. You know, I learned a lot about philanthropy. I learned a lot about community organizing from folks in the Bronx. The Bronx, when I think about the Bronx, I think about people who just make things happen. We don't wait, right? Like I talk a lot about 2 presidents came to the Bronx, turned around, left the Bronx, and didn't know what to do. And after each visit, the community rose up and said, you know what, we're going to rebuild our buildings. We're going to reinvest in our community. And so what I love about the Bronx is this kind of internal spirit of philanthropy that is the philanthropy of the people, right? It's not simply cash, but it is the philanthropy of the people to say, you know, we know what we deserve. We know what our communities deserve. We know what our children deserve. So we're going to build it and we're going to make it happen. And we're not going to we're not going to wait for someone to give us a thing. We're going to do the thing. And, you know, that has been my professional, personal lived experience in the Bronx, is just seeing people come in and say, we're not waiting for somebody to give us something, we're going to do it. And honestly, that's the way of Black folks, right? That's the way we've been taught. That's the way we've been raised. That's our history. That's our legacy. And so much of that just lives in the Bronx.
Great. Thank you so much for that answer. And I mean, I really love that philanthropy of the people, and we're not waiting. And you're right. I love that about the Bronx. Same question to you, Dr. Rainey. What do you love about your Brooklyn community? And with regards to philanthropy, how do you put that love in action?
You know, what I love about Brooklyn is the people. You know, I too, like you, I'm a lifelong Brooklynite. I love Brooklyn. I've lived all over Brooklyn. I shop at my local bodega because we know that New York City is a city of small businesses, and that philanthropy goes beyond just what you do for nonprofits. It's also like, what are you doing in your community and for your community? I've lived in Flatbush. I raised my kids in Bed-Stuy. I owned a home in Park Slope at one point. You know, I've had the pleasure and the honor of being able to work in Brooklyn and serve Brooklyn communities for so many years of my career. You know, I think that this, when this job became available to me, what I understood was like, this is my dream job. This is the work that I was built to do. I have been working towards racial justice long before I understood what racial justice was, long before I understood what critical race theory was. But what I did understand are the inequities that people of color and the inequities that my family itself has experienced, right? Regardless of where you sit on the socioeconomic ladder, you know what? The inequities for people of color are real. And, like Meisha, I feel like I've learned this through, being a young person, through working, through, paying attention. And so the foundation is a foundation that is focused on community. It is focused on what community needs, what is happening. We don't live, like myself, we don't live on our own laurels of what we believe community needs. We go out and ask community. So what I have been doing is something that I've always done, is that, I understand that I don't know what I don't know. Right? I'm a Black woman who is not afraid to journey in this city, but I still don't know the experience of every community and every person. So this foundation was founded by a bank. We do deep analysis of the work that we do all the time, and we pivot, and we have continuously pivoted depending on what the community needs. So we do participatory grant making, which means that the community makes the decisions on where our monies go. They're the ones who tell us, this is what's needed, the ones with lived experience, the folks doing the work. We'll talk about it more, but we do long-term funding because we understand that nonprofits need long-term funding. And we don't just talk to, the nonprofits, we talk to parents and educators like Dr. Porter, like that are working with young people that are struggling every single day. We talk to business owners. So the way that I have incorporated who I am into this is that we have began listening tours across all of Brooklyn and every single neighborhood to hear from them, so that I won't be, doing this work from what I believe. I'm doing this work from the stories of the people that I serve. So I am excited to continue this conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. And I love that both of you doctors were not only products of your community, but stayed in your community and all facets of it to really uplift it and really not just say what you want to do, but what our people are doing, and shine light and resources to the beneficiaries in the Bronx and Brooklyn. So thank you for that. So speaking of some of those things that you're really trying to shine light on, along with the Black Philanthropy Month, there's some 10 main funding principles that came out of that. But basically the 10 principles are: 1, we are committing to public, transparent, annual Black funding goals for impact. 2, long-term multi-year funding. 3, remember small to medium-sized Black businesses and startups. 4, trust us for change. We know what we need. Trust the people who are telling you what we want to do for change. And I think both of you spoke about that. 5, flexible general support for operations. It's really tough with nonprofits. There's not a lot of money that goes to general operation expenses. So that's excellent. 6, funding with social justice lens. It seems like, even as Dr. Rainey mentioned, she was in social justice before she even knew what social justice was. And all these terms are popping up, but we were doing the work anyway. Slap whatever term we want to on it. We were doing it anyway. 7, preservation of the Black philanthropic practice of self-reliance and mutual support. And I think Dr. Meisha Porter was talking about that a little bit, that we can do it ourselves. And we have some of the things we have in our community that we're not waiting for people. We're going to get it done. 8, support Black innovation and creativity. 9, supporting an intersectional human rights agenda. And 10, inclusive and mutually supportive funding across the global Black community. So I'm going to start first with Pan-African Solutions Consulting. 10 really resonates with me for my Black philanthropic goals as I'm working with my clients who are either nonprofits here in Brooklyn, government ministries in Africa, or even, philanthropic organizations in New York or the larger United States, where trying to support global Black initiatives. This idea of the global Black community, global Black diaspora, for me is so important, particularly in a place like Brooklyn, And I know it's in the Bronx too. You know, in Brooklyn, we have so many diverse cultures from Africa, from the Caribbean. You know, growing up, it's funny. I was like, oh, we're all Black. You know, I'm from Black, you know, I'm from down South. My family's from down South. We've been in Brooklyn for 3 generations. So I was like, wait, why do you have an accent? And who's Bob Marley? And what's going on? And I love that oxtails, you know, and it's just like, wow, we're not a monolith. And to give the idea that the global Black diaspora is not a monolith, but we also have networks, reaches, and opportunities globally. That's something that really resonates with my organization. I'm going to start with Dr. Meisha Porter of the Bronx Community Foundation. Which of the 10 Black funding principles for Black Philanthropy Month really resonates with you and the Bronx Community Foundation?
First of all of them and so many of them, but you know, if I have to pick, I can't pick, but I'll pick 4 and 8. You know, trust us for change, supporting Black innovation and creativity. I think it speaks to a lot of, you know, just what I talked about. But one of the things I talk about, which is why I'm so excited to be on here with my sister, Dr. Rainey, you know, this idea of proximate leadership. Traditional philanthropy really rests in rich folks with wealth saying, this is what we think should happen in this place to solve this problem. And it doesn't often lean into the folks who are most proximate to the problem, who've experienced the problems, right? Who know firsthand what the solutions are, even if they don't have them, they know them. And so, you know, I think it's really important to trust us, to lean into us, to guide philanthropic dollars. That's why I think our 2 organizations are so important locally. And then there's so much creativity and innovation in our community. And there's so many innovative, creative ways we think about to solve problems. You know, we're super excited to be on our launched our strategic planning, and we're having conversations across the borough. And our conversations include food, they include music, they include dance, they include song, because that's how we think, that's how we connect, that's how we build, that's how we develop. And so I think it's just really important to believe in us, trust us, and recognize that we are the ones who know how to solve our problems. We don't need another person, but we do need the levels of investment that are required to get it done.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really like that proximity to the problem. Trust us because we're on the ground and we know what's going on. And then also creativity. And that kind of speaks a little bit to hip hop culture. Now, I mean, outside of all the music, but specifically as we're celebrating hip hop culture, the music, the dance, the culture, as it just transmitting the message, right? Getting the message moving forward. So thank you so much for highlighting that. Same question to you, Dr. Rainey. Which of the Black funding principles really resonates with a Brooklyn Community Foundation and you for Black Philanthropic Month?
I thank Dr. Porter for saying exactly what I felt. Is like, you know, all of these, right? There's so much in every single one of these that I bring to the table and my team brings to the table every single day, and how we do this work. But if I have to choose 2, which I'm going to choose 2 as well, is that I would say, you know, 5 and 6, right? And I would say that, you know what, as someone who ran a nonprofit myself, and understanding how important it is for a nonprofit leader to be able to dream and be able to serve their community where their community needs service, that having, you know, flexible and general operating funding is hugely important. And every grant we give from the foundation is given as general operating, and that they can make a decision. A nonprofit can dream, they can actually serve their community where their community needs to be served, but they also can serve their foundation itself. And if they need to hire another person or increase wages, they could use our funding in any way they want to use it, right? Like that real trust-based philanthropy is what we do. And I'm extremely proud of that. And then I would say 6, you know, we do all of our funding through a racial justice and social justice lens. And what I have discovered from that, you know, also having been a grantee, is that it keeps our North Star clear, right? Like it's extremely clear. And if you take away those words of, you know, racial justice, then sometimes you might lose your way. And we know what systemic racism has done to our country, to our communities. And so I am really proud that we are very clear about how we do this work and who we are supporting through that very clear lens. And so I think that those are the two that resonate with me the most. But there's just so much here that that is aligned with the work and how we do the work and how we talk about the work.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think that also gives light to something that's so important in all communities, but particularly the Black community. What happens when a dream is deferred, you know, and to give people the support to really dream. It's okay to dream. You know, even as I educate on the side as well. And, you know, as I deal with my students from all levels, I want them to be creative. I feel like there's a lack of creativity. Dr. Meisha Porter, you talked about the creativity, and that's something as well. Dream, create, you know, don't just replicate and repeat the will. You have to have the ability to sit down in the space to feel free to dream. And I think that's so important. Thank you so much for that. And
I just want to say, like, as far as dream, I want to say that I'm just so happy and thank you for this platform for me and Dr. Porter to be here together, because I think that also I want to make sure that we're talking about the fact that there is not a scarcity of resources in New York City, right? Like, the Bronx needs to thrive just like Brooklyn needs to thrive. And I think that this is a time for leaders like me and Dr. Porter, who are from the communities that we serve, and we understand the bigger picture. So I think that you giving us an opportunity to be here together to show that, you know, there is enough for every single one of us, and that we want to make sure that our brothers and sisters across New York City, but also across the country, are also thriving. And so this is a great opportunity for us to be able to talk a little bit about what is needed, and also like call people out to come and help. And, you know, like a lot of times when I'm fundraising, I'm not thinking about fundraising just for the foundation, which is great, where we know a lot about the smaller nonprofits, we can get money to them, we know that, but I also want you to support nonprofits if that's what you want to do as well, and also lift them up. And I want you to support the Bronx. And I think that, you know, I just want to thank you again for this opportunity for us to be here together.
Yeah, no, of course. And thank you again, both of you, for making the time. Traditionally, the face of philanthropy has been wealthy, maybe sometimes even white. I just want to, given a Rockefeller Philanthropy report in 2012, they said that Black people give 25% more of their income away to philanthropic initiatives than white people do. Yet people, again, have this idea that philanthropy is white males and very wealthy, right? Let's bring it a little bit more geographical, bring it back to the neighborhood. And as we're celebrating 50 years of hip hop, some people will fail to realize that this back to school jam community fundraiser for DJ Kool Herc's sister on August 11th, 1973 in the Bronx was the birth of hip hop. How was it the birth of hip hop? Well, he tried to do something new right then. He decided to use his turntable. He extended the instrumental beat, breaking or scratching, and to let people dance a little bit longer. That kind of dancing then became break dancing, also started in the Bronx, and started emceeing or rapping over that extended break. So that was the birth of hip hop. So we always talk about that party, but we fail to realize or make the connection that was a fundraiser. Community fundraising right there. So to borrow a question from the movie Brown Sugar, Dr. Porter, I'm going to ask you first. When did you first fall in love with hip hop?
So first of all, August 11th is my mama's birthday. August 11th, 1973, my mama was pregnant with me. And there's so many, and my other secret is I was born in Queens, right? I was born in Queens. I was born in Far Rockaway, moved to South Jamaica, and moved to the South Bronx when I was 17. But I fell in love with hip hop in Southside Jamaica, Queens, in Baisley Park, in the Park Jam, that from my house where I lived on 116th and Suffolk, on the Friday, Saturday night, you just sat and you waited on your stoop to hear DJ True Force in the park. And when you heard it, the whole neighborhood just started moving to Baisley Park. And MC Wacky D was wild crazy. Like, it was crazy. And so my love for hip hop started sitting on a stoop in South Jamaica, listening for the beat that drew us all to the park, to watch people dance, to listen to the DJ, to like, we didn't have house parties. Well, we had house parties, but the park jam was the thing. And it was the place to be. And that's where my love for hip hop started. And this year, as I turn 50, November 18th, I'm turning hip hop years old. I'm looking forward to celebrating all ways in which this genre has transformed the world. And so that's where my love for hip hop began.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. That's so fun. And you know what, actually, as Dr. Rainey said, it's not just a Brooklyn and Bronx thing. We got love for Queens. We got love for Manhattan and Harlem. We got love for Staten Island, Wu-Tang, where you at?
I love Wu-Tang.
Actually, but also, who's going to the Rock the Bells concert this weekend? I'm really excited for it. I said, oh, Queen Latifah, sign me up. So yes, enough respect to Queens. So Dr. Rainey, same question to borrow from Brown Sugar. When did you fall in love with hip hop?
When I was in 7th grade in 1979 and Rapper's Delight, and my classmates, so I'm aging myself a bit, my classmates were passing around the lyrics to Rapper's Delight, and we were all just enthralled with like this new genre that we were able to experience in a different way and dance to. So I am clear about what was happening in Junior High School 60 on the Lower East Side in 1979. It was Rapper's Delight.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Yeah,
actually, you took us back to a place where we would just, we had to rewind the tape to get the lyrics. We didn't have tunes and downloads and the lyrics. We had to listen for the lyrics.
And different.
Yeah, my mom actually grew up in the Lower East Side, and I'm going to answer that question myself. I'm an 80s baby, so my parents are actually 60s babies, so they were of the hip hop generation as they were coming of age. And when I fell in love with hip hop was 1995. I was about 10 years old, and the song "You're All I Need to Get By" Method Man.
Oh, that is
yes, came on. And my thing was that it was the combination, because she, Mary, shout out to Mount Vernon, New York State love. Like Mary was everything, her style, her swag, her everything. But then to go with Method Man, and the funny thing is, okay, so y'all was writing lyrics. By then I had the cassette tapes, right? And that's when I would go read the lyrics and look at the artwork and stuff. But that was the first song I actually memorized. And it wasn't Mary's part. It was Method Man's part. And the thing that I also loved about Y'all Allowed to Get By, it not only reminded me of hip hop and R&B, but it took it back to the soul, right? From the original Marvin Gaye song in 1968. You're All I Need to Get By with Tammy Terrell from Motown Records. So that's when I fell in love with hip hop. I took time to memorize each lyric. Every time you hear karaoke, I'm gonna need to sing that song. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna come and sing?" No, I'm rapping too. So speaking of rapping, hip hop and love of hip hop, I have a question. 1987 song, "The Bridge Is Over" by Boogie Down Productions. KRS-One said, "Manhattan keep on making it, Brooklyn keep on taking it, Bronx keep creating it, Queens keep on faking it." Would you agree? What was the collaborative and individual legacy of hip hop music from the Bronx and Brooklyn, either for music, culture, or Black philanthropy? Would you agree with those lyrics or not? I'll start with Dr. Porter.
I can't because I'm from Queens.
Okay.
So, and shout out to KRS-One. When you talk about philanthropy, he has a philanthropic mindset for the Bronx. But I love you, brother. Can't agree. Queens, from Queens come Queens is all I'm gonna say.
Okay. And what about you, Dr. Rainey? Would you agree with those lyrics or no?
I think I do. I think about, when I think about Brooklyn and the Bronx and, who came out of Brooklyn, when you think about Jay-Z and you think about Big and Mos Def and just a variety of folks. And then you think about the founding of hip hop in the Bronx, and you think about, Master Flash and all those people, you think about like how we brought together. But what I think that to collaboratively, what I think Brooklyn and the Bronx did together was that they created the East Coast rap culture. And I think that that gave life to all the other rappers across who we are. Like, I love Wu-Tang, you know, there's so many that came from Long Island, from Queens, but I do think that you have to think about where it started and like who really put it on the map, and then how we were able to kind of like create this East Coast kind of culture of rap that has, you know, stayed with us for so long.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I'm going to also answer that question. I agree with both of you, actually, because you can't really forget Queens. I will say my first realization that hip hop was not just ours, it was global, was in 2005 when I took my first trip to Africa. I was in Ghana writing a case study for Harvard Business School. And I was interviewing entrepreneurs out there, and I would take, you know, we call them dollar vans out here, there, different places call it chochos, matatus. I was taking a, and I saw a dollar van plastered with 50 Cent's face, "Get rich or die trying." I said, good Lord, if hip hop ain't global. And to really just see like, wow, you know, just, you know, we are a culture. And, you know, yes, it defined East Coast, because, you know, I was in college, or, you know, going through high school, and Cash 99, 2000 years. And I was like, what's this Southern rap? It took me a while to, it's like, this ain't East Coast, this ain't East Coast. But we really did set it up. Now you have people rapping reggaeton, you know, different Spanish, different languages. We really set a culture of expression to the world. And it wasn't a Bronx or Brooklyn thing. I think it was a collective thing.
New York
So
City
thank you
thing,
for
for
sharing
sure.
that. Yes.
Yep.
Great. More of the work of your foundations now. Black donors' largesse generally falls into three categories, right? There's cornerstone funding or philanthropic initiatives, which gives to higher education and the arts. Two, there's kind of kinship funding, where people donate to organizations serving the Black community, right? And then three, there's kind of sanctified donations, where, you know, people give to faith-based organizations through tithes, or, you know, through other things with other, you know, Jewish, Muslim, other ways that you give, you know, to your religious organizations, right? With the recent changes in social justice in New York State, i.e. the cannabis reform through the conditional adult use and redispensary license, or the Supreme Court of the United States very recently, decisions on affirmative action in higher education, and also student loan debt cancellation. I see, it stresses me out even trying to say it. Cancel my loan. No. And the burgeoning national call for reparations. Let's not forget about that. You know, I'm going to kick it off with Dr. Rainey first, of the Brooklyn Community Foundation. What are some current funding priorities or trends that your foundation is funding in Brooklyn?
You know, so we are currently, so we're, just so you know, that we're currently wrapping up a strategic plan and a rebranding moment with the organization, engagements with the organization. So we are, you know, like I said earlier, we are an organization that constantly evaluates and reevaluates our work. And we really do some real deep kind of assessment of like, are we funding in the right area? So currently we fund programming that is focused on youth, elders, immigrants, and we also have a portfolio that's focused on wellness and recovery. One of the things that we're finding through this last 2 years of deep evaluation, listening tours, is that we want to cast a wider net. I think that, to your first point around, you know, us as a people being far more philanthropic than any other culture, we know this to be true, is that I feel like one of the things that's really important is that everyone sees themselves as being able to be philanthropic. And that philanthropy could look a lot of different ways. And like, for us to understand what philanthropy is, and we're talking about it in the way that you were just talking about it, in regards to how we tithe, how we give to our local pantry, how we take care of other people's children. And so one of the things I think that we do currently that's really important is that we have advisory councils that we pay them to be philanthropic, to make decisions on where our fundraising goes. But now we're starting to think a little bit like about how do we cast a wider net, and making sure that we are addressing needs as they arise. And some of the things that you're talking about I wrote a paper on reparations with one of our colleagues from the Robert Sterling Clark Foundation. And we're looking at like, how can we support reparations? How do we support organizations that are doing the work and organizing and advocacy towards reparations? So I think that is the work for our foundation right now, is for us to really do a strong evaluation of the issues that are at hand right now. And then how do we make sure that we're able to stand in the gap and support organizations that are actually doing that work. So all of the issue areas that you brought up, we're looking at, and we're thinking about, as we move into this next phase of the foundation, which will be early in the third quarter, we'll be looking at how do we do those things right now. But for now, I think that it's our supporting of things like Black women maternal health, knowing that, Black and brown women, regardless of socioeconomic status, are struggling with more maternal health issues, that we are supporting organizations that are working on youth development and connecting young people to STEM jobs and STEM opportunities for them to be able to move into the middle class faster by being in those kinds of jobs in the labor market. So yeah, I know it's a long way to go, but a long story to go through, but we're connecting the dots as we go to make sure that we are current and that we're addressing.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And yes, it's the large scale issues that we're all trying to address. And I'm glad that you have a strategic plan. You're reaching out to people who can actually hear what they have going on, and that you do have something to move us forward. So thank you so much, because they're also, I was listening to Desmond and Derek talk, Dr. Porter with the Bronx Community Foundation, and they really talked a lot about concentric circles and how all these different things impact each other. So I'm going to turn that question to you, Dr. Meisha Porter. What are some current funding priorities or trends that the Bronx Community Foundation is focused on right now?
Yeah, so we too, we're in the midst of our strategic planning process. And I think about the foundation in three phases. Phase one was Derek and Desmond ideating about creating a foundation and building an infrastructure for it. Phase two was the relief efforts that we led here in the Bronx. And now phase three is me and the team moving the foundation forward to be what the community needs it to be, right? And that's what those conversations are about. But our strategic funding initiatives are divided into 5 core pillars: community, equity and justice, economic security, health, education, and digital equity. We break our funding priorities down into grant making opportunities and programming across the year. But we also know that we have to be nimble, and we have to, think about what's happening and what's current. And so we have done, and I know the Brooklyn Community Foundation as well, we've supported asylum seekers with food. We've supported legal services for asylum seekers. We recognized early on, actually, in fact, one of the first conversations Derek and Desmond and I had when we first started was about cannabis and what was the foundation's role going to be in cannabis, and really saw that the state had really, and our legislators had really done a good thing in terms of the social justice lens through which they are offering licenses. But we also know what is in paper and how it lives in practice can be very different. And so we recognized very early on that while the first 100 licenses, card licenses, would go to those folks who are criminally justice impacted or legacy market folk, there wasn't a pathway for them, right? Like if you knew and had resources, then yes, but for the most part, it wasn't. And so we partnered with the Bronx Defenders to launch the Bronx Cannabis Hub to help folks across the city get those licenses. And we also built a pop-up dispensary that we've taken across the state so folks could see, if they wanted to be in the industry, what it means to run a dispensary from the front end to the back end. And so this idea of recognizing, right, like community, equity and justice, economic security, health, education, digital, are all things that we need to focus on in the Bronx, but we also need to be aware of what's happening and changing in our world so that we can be nimble. And that's quite honestly, the flexibility and power we have as community foundations is to be nimble. It's the power we have as women, as Black women of the community, is the recognition that You know, things change, communities transition over time, and what it means for each of us in our roles in the foundation to meet their needs, we must be flexible. We can't, in 20 years from now, both of us need to look and feel different for the community. And that's part of why these ongoing conversations are so important.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for that. And again, you all tackling so many major issues. And again, all of it is with a social justice lens. And it's not only that you're looking at your past, but also, you know, where do you want to go? And, you know, that brings us really to our next really question. August 17th, the third thing that makes this August of 2023 is so amazing for Black community fundraising. And August 17th, 2017, Sharita J. Herring Oglesby, who's also a Black woman, promoted National Nonprofit Day to recognize nonprofits' impacts on their communities and the world. She chose August 17th in remembrance of the August 17th, 1894 Tariff Act, which imposed the first federal income tax on corporations and included exemptions for nonprofits and corporations in charitable jurisdictions to make them kind of what we are today with nonprofits. So I'm going to start with Dr. Rainey. With the Brooklyn Community Foundation, let's look at the past and also let's look at the future, right? What has been your most meaningful impact of your foundation has had on its beneficiaries thus far since the Brooklyn Foundation inception, Community Foundation's inception, or since your tenure there? And then as we're celebrating 50 years of hip hop this August, you know, people say 5 years, 10 years. I'm going to challenge you 50 years. What do you want your legacy to be through the work of the Brooklyn Community Foundation 50 years from now? So looking in the past and also to the future, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Porter.
I think that what I think has been the biggest impact that I think the foundation has made since its inception is that the funding of organizations long-term and general operating. I know that we already talked about that, but what I will say is that nonprofits in Brooklyn, it has over close to 30% of the nonprofits and only get about 7% of the funding. Yeah. And so, you know, we are also, you know, almost 2.8 million people, the most people in New York City. And so it also is a community that has that a city, a borough that would be the fourth largest city in the country if it was a city that has a lot of need. And I think that what I'm most proud of is that the way that we fund, you know, that we have funded organizations based on their mission, not based on their numbers, right? Like we're funding missions. We are funding from our understanding that you know, organizations that are run by Black leaders are not funded the same as organizations that are run by white leaders, but they're the organizations that are deep in the community. Yeah. And that we're funding them we're giving them general operating for 3 years, and then we're funding them long-term. So that I really am proud of the organization that we've been doing this before I came on board, but it's really so aligned with what I believe. And I also am very proud that we are able to bring so many Brooklyn community members along with us. You know, I want to say that I think that Dr. Porter would say the same, that we want to make sure to say that we would not be able to do this work if people didn't believe in our missions and didn't fund our missions. And we want folks to continue to do that because we can't do this work alone. We need community members to really care about their neighbors and support what we're doing as well. I would say in 50 years, Chevelle, I want to see that nonprofits are funded in a way that they are truly able to do their work, that the people that are in nonprofits are paid what they deserve to be paid. We cannot do long-term change work in communities when people are not compensated in a way that would allow them to be able to stay put. The folks that are doing the work are usually people who come from the communities that, you know, have the lived experiences. And I think that as funders, I want to be a model of how you fund nonprofits. Like, we don't have a pot at the end of the rainbow. We don't have like a ton of money, but I want people to understand that we are funding nonprofits in a way that their leaders can actually can actually compensate their employees, can do the work without their hands being tied, that, you know, what we're concerned about, how much is going towards operations versus how much is going through programming, that we're trusting nonprofits to do this work, right? And that we're ensuring that people are being paid the way they're supposed to be paid. And I think that the other piece that I like to see in the long term for my foundation, I would feel like, you know, we've done our work, is that we're with our community members, with our donors, that we're able to really like, you know, step into the gap when things happen. Like Dr. Porter said, like, we want to be responsive and we want to be able to serve. And as soon as if there's a flood in Mill Basin, if there is, you know, if there is an immigrant crisis that folks need clothes, like, we want to be able to do that. And we want to be as nimble as we possibly can be. So I think that those two things in 50 years, if the foundation was here to serve communities and could serve them during when they have urgent needs, but also making sure that the nonprofits that are actually doing the work, right, that they are funded in a way that they can actually maintain their employees and that they can continue to serve their communities.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that really speaks to like making sure that nonprofits are sustainable. And then you also gave some light into creating a culture of stewardship on the Brooklyn block within the community, and having that culture of stewardship really sustain and, you know, fuel, you know, the nonprofits, and most importantly, pay these people what they need so that they can keep the work going. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Meisha Porter, I'm going to ask you the same two questions. What has been the most meaningful impact of the Bronx Community Foundation has on its beneficiaries thus far? And as we're celebrating 50 years of hip hop, what's your goals of your legacy to be through your work at the Bronx Community Foundation 50 years from now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think ditto to everything Dr. Rainey said. You know, I think this language of nonprofit undermines the work that nonprofits actually do. They do the most profitable work. They do people work, right? And so I think it's really important to think about, you know, the way we invest in the sector that does the most important work, that invests in our people. When I was executive superintendent of the Bronx when the pandemic hit. And I knew that the students and families that I served were going to be most greatly impacted. I knew it. I didn't even have to understand what was happening in the world to know that. But it was our nonprofit partners who knew what was happening in community, who knew which families needed food, knew which families were disconnected, who were on the ground, who were showing up to work every single day, who were distributing food. And, you know, that to me is extremely powerful, and it's what kept communities going and thriving when it was impossible, when it felt impossible to thrive. And so I am just thankful to all the nonprofit leaders, and every time I get a chance to, I thank them for the ways in which they supported us to be able to do our work in school systems. I think the greatest impact we've had so far has been being able to stand up in the pandemic and distribute $15 million in resources in community. I think the greatest legacy, I think a lot about this in terms of the anniversary of hip hop, really. You know, 50 years ago at 1520 Sedgwick, DJ Kool Herc did a thing that transformed music, fashion, culture across the world, right? It started on a block that honestly still looks and feels the same as it did 50 years ago. And so my hope is that folks will see through the Bronx Community Foundation a place to make significant investment, to give back what the Bronx gave to the world, right? Like $1 billion for the Bronx. Let's do that, right? Let's invest in the Bronx in the way the Bronx has created culture, created fashion, created music. You know, don't just come through to drive past and check out 1520 and take a picture. Make a significant investment in this borough that has given so much to the world. And so my hope for the foundation is that folks will see that this is the space through which we can steward your philanthropy, believe in us, and believe in our ability to make change, and believe in our ability to be closely to the people and connected to what they need and want.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And I just have one more question to wrap it up. And thank you so much for your time. So as we're talking about the monumental month of August 2023 and what it means for Black community fundraising, we want to talk about what are current opportunities of that potential donors or philanthropic partners can have with your individual community foundations. And ultimately, what is your call to action for Black Philanthropy Month? I'm going to start with my organization, Pan-African Solutions Consulting. The current opportunity is right now. I'm really love creating platforms to really have the story be told for amazing organizations that are doing impactful, real work on the ground, and for them to be highlighted. I have current opportunities for organizations to reach out for not only just fundraising development, but also strategic development, to not only focus on the Black diaspora here in your geographical location, but also the global Black diaspora, and ways that we can support Pan-Africanism, but also mutual corporate economic development. So you can contact me at pan-africansolutions.com, which we'll add to the video, or look at my website, pan-africansolutions.com, for more information. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rainey to answer the question, and I'll repeat it again. What current opportunities does your foundation have for potential donors and philanthropic partners? And what's your foundation's call to action for Black Philanthropy Month, and any final last words?
So I would say that we have so many opportunities for people to join us. There's opportunities absolutely to be a donor of the foundation, to support our work. If you want to really get close to and support the work at the very grassroots that are doing the work in communities to help communities thrive, there is no organization in Brooklyn that has a closer connection to small nonprofits in Brooklyn than we do. And we know what's happening in community. So I ask you to support the foundation in that way. But there's also an opportunity for us to support you in your own philanthropic giving. We have donor advised funds that we hold, which allow you to not only do your own philanthropic work that you want to do, it also means that you're going to also be supporting us in the work that we do. So all the great work that we do in Brooklyn, you will be connected to that as well. So you can always connect to me at CEO@BrooklynCommunityFoundation.org, or you can go onto our website where you will learn about so many opportunities to connect. You'll be able to see our briefing on our listening tour to get a sense of what's happening in communities. You can connect to the folks that run our donor advised fund. You can learn about our advisory committees, where you are welcome to join us on our advisory committees. And as I said, that's another way to be philanthropic, is to look at our nonprofits and to help us to think about where we grant and who we grant to. And you can join us at our ball on October 12th. So you can reach us there, and that's BrooklynCommunityFoundation.org.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rainey. And then Dr. Meisha Porter, what are some current opportunities your foundation has for potential donors, philanthropic partners, and what's your foundation's call to action for Black Philanthropy Month?
Yeah, so same as Dr. Rainey, you can go into www.thebronx.org to give. We are building though, and so you can be part of building and telling the story of the Bronx Community Foundation. We welcome folks to come and participate in the community conversations that we're having across the borough. We welcome you to be a part of helping us build our story forward. There's so many ways to give back. We are really excited that we're building our board, and so if there's interest, there's spaces there. There are just so many, I think, exciting ways to be a part of building the Bronx Community Foundation forward. But I'd also say this is, I think, my call to action is to support Black women in philanthropy. See us for who we are in this moment. We lead different, we show up differently. One of my first conversations was with Dr. Rainey before we even knew each other. People were telling both of us, the two of you got to get together. And it's been a sisterhood ever since, right? Like we're not outside in competition. We're outside lifting each other up. And when I talk about the Bronx, I'm like, oh, and you got to talk to Dr. Rainey in Brooklyn and vice versa. I've had so many conversations that have been sent my way. And so, you know, we look different, right? Like we're, you know, you talked in the beginning about what philanthropy looks like. We are what philanthropy needs to look like. And so I'm saying invest in us, invest in our organizations, but really look at ways to lift up Black women in philanthropy, because as in many spaces, we are the 1% often.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. And thank you to both of you, Dr. Rainey, Dr. Porter. This has been, honestly, I've had so much fun in this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I also want to thank the Association of Fundraising Professionals, New York City chapter, for allowing us to convene under this platform. Again, as Dr. Porter and Dr. Rainey said, there's different ways to contact them. And again, in light of, 50 years of hip hop, National Nonprofit Day, and then also, Black Philanthropy Month. Yes, it's time to support us. And the most important thing that Dr. Rainey said, well, not most important thing, one thing I wanted to highlight, she mentioned donor advised funds. And honestly, in my mind, that's kind of a call to action that I would also like to support. Some of our audience members may not know what a donor advised fund is, but similarly to what the community foundations do, you put your money under a topic, under a pillar, and then the community foundation or the organization funnels that money to the people that they vetted, they're doing the monitoring and evaluation for, to show that they're actually having an impact and your money is actually having meaningful dollars. So sometimes as a donor, you may not know that you want to give to XYZ organization, but you do know that you want to promote education, or you know that you want to promote a certain cause. So donor advised funds is a really great way to look into that. So again, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and thank you.